Thanks to all the people who requested Rage Against the Machine in the comments, and a big shout out to my new Patreon supporters, Eduardo del Principe, David Condon, ShuffleQuest, Logan Huff, and Flavio Vaizo. Vaizo?
We are able to seduce some people in with the music who then are exposed to a different political message.
In many people's ears, Rage Against the Machine calls to mind some fantastic music, but to others, they were much more than that. With a closer look, you'll find that Zack de la Rocha, the vocalist, wrote some incredibly moving protest songs to create change in the US. They were not just a band, they were a political movement. And to perpetuate their political messages, they used an addicting mixture of funk, hard rock, and hip-hop to make their message even more influential. But where did their sound and political roots come from? And where is Rage in 2018? Let's take a closer look. In '91, members of a band called Lockup decided to part their ways. This was guitarist Tom Morello's former band, and through his ex-drummer John Knox, he got in contact with bassist Tim Comerford and vocalist Zack de la Rocha. Tom, who was eager to put a new band together, also contacted Brad Wilk, who had unsuccessfully auditioned for Lockup on a previous occasion. The band quickly named themselves Rage Against the Machine, started writing songs, performing, and even released a demo cassette tape featuring all the songs that would appear on their debut album. It also featured 2 eventual B-side tracks and 3 additional tracks that never made it onto the LP. Now, Rage Against the Machine is one of those bands that blew up commercially from the very beginning. They signed to Epic Records and recorded their debut, self-titled album, and it was a huge success, achieving triple platinum sales after its release. Much of their attention initially came from Killing in the Name, which was their first single that was on heavy rotation all across the US.
Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses. Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses.
Zack de la Rocha uses a form of sloganeering in this song. In essence, it's based on 4 lines that are repeated over and over throughout the verse, hook, and pre-chorus. Like many of their other songs, it's a protest song that aimed at criticizing killing of any kind. That's why he left the phrase unfinished. It doesn't matter if you kill in the name of God, in the name of an ideology, or even in the name of the law. Zack refuses to accept murder no matter the reason. The second line is believed to be a response to the racial tensions in the US at this point, specifically the Rodney King incident. The local taxi driver Rodney King became a household name after he was arrested on March 3rd, 1991. George Holliday, a civilian, filmed the incident from his nearby balcony and sent the footage to a local news station. The footage clearly showed King being beaten repeatedly with excessive force. And as a result of that, this case blew up and was talked about all around the world. Some people saw this as an act of both violence and racism, which again relates to the phrase in the song. Some of those that work forces, referring to the police, and are the same that burn crosses, referring to the KKK, a group that embraced cross burning as a means of intimidation. In the last line, Zack points his finger at the listener who might blindly follow the commands of police and other authorities without questioning what's at stake. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the band's political stand. All of their songs are filled with a message that serves as an opposition, sometimes to the right-wing politics, other times to the system in general. But their criticism doesn't stop at the lyrics though. Even the album cover has a political message behind it. This is Malcolm Brown's Pulitzer Prize winning photograph of a Vietnamese monk who put himself on fire in the streets of Saigon in 1963. He did this as a protest of the murder of Buddhists by the US-backed Prime Minister, I'm not gonna pronounce his name, but this guy's regime. It's ultimately Rage's way of criticizing the atrocities that the American government were fully aware of, but never tried to stop. As you can see, Rage was not just a band, they were a political movement. But what attracted most people in the first place was their music, of course. They took both inspiration from hip-hop groups like Run DMC, Public Enemy, Beastie Boys, and punk bands like Sex Pistols and Fugazi. and sprinkled it with a bit of funk on top. The result, well, listen for yourself.
We gotta take the power back. We gotta take the power back.
After touring for their debut album throughout most of the year in '93, rumors had been spreading about the band possibly splitting up. But this was far from the truth. 3 years later, they released a second album, Evil Empire, and although the album image is far from being as visceral and disturbing as the first one, it has a very interesting story behind it that Zack nuanced in an interview.
The image of the second record is a little more ironic, you know, considering, you know, if you look very closely at the boy's face, you know, to us he symbolizes the power structure in the U.S., you know, and if you look at him, he's smiling as if he's in control. But if you look deeper into his face, you see that he's afraid because he knows what's coming. He knows that poor people in the U.S. are not going to continue to suffer in the way that they suffer without taking action against them. So we feel that that picture captured that very well.
When hearing his analysis of the album cover, it's clear that Zack had some heavy anti-establishment views. The lyrics of his songs follow the same pattern, and the music itself is filled with feelings of anger, frustration, and desperation. But where did these feelings come from?
I grew up in a very, you know, I was a Mexicano in a part of the country where I was the exception to the rule, because most Mexicanos in Orange County were there because they had a broom or a hammer in their hands, or were picking baskets of strawberries, you know. So this is, there was I had a deep sense of frustration and alienation I experienced growing up in a very conservative community, very racist, very conservative community. And I think that that's what initially attracted me to punk music and punk culture. Yeah.
The main thing that politicized me is I was the only black kid in an all-white town. So I didn't have to read about injustice or the feelings that the underdog might have. I got it beaten into me on the playground, you know, and that's a...
So how literal is that?
What are you talking about? Like, there's a particular word that sometimes white people who don't like black people use. Like that was a nickname, you know.
Both Zack and Tom grew up as children of color. They were a part of a minority in the white suburbs of Chicago and Los Angeles, and both of them had parents that came from politically active backgrounds. Tom's father participated in a war known as the Mau Mau Uprising in Kenya and became Kenya's first ambassador to the US. His mom was a school teacher and met Tom's father while attending a pro-democracy protest in Nairobi. Now, Zack also had a father that was quite politically active. He was a member of a legendary Chicano art movement of Mexican Americans who were politicized back in the 60s. As mentioned before, both Tom and Zack struggled with racist remarks from their classmates in school, and their parents encouraged them to stand up for themselves and go against the discrimination that they were facing. And this led them to take the proud political ideas from their parents' generation and to perpetuate them to a younger generation through music. Now, as the band toured Evil Empire in '97, they had to abort several shows because of heavy criticism. Loads of people tried to stop the band from doing their shows because they perceived the band's message as pro-violence and anti-law enforcement, which might not be surprising statements to believe when Morello has described himself as an anarchist. Contrary to that statement, Zack mentioned in 2011 that the band always wanted to be a peaceful opposition.
Rage Against the Machine is a band that has never advocated violence. We've always advocated a direct opposition to unjust wars like the one started by John McCain and the Republicans and Bush and all of them. That's why we're here today, standing peaceful opposition. And the reality is, we're just four musicians from Los Angeles who have used our voices and our talent and our musicianship and our words to stand up against these unjust policies. And why the fuck are these cops so afraid of us? Are they afraid of us? Yeah! No! musicians, they're afraid of you!
In 1999, the band released their third album, The Battle of Los Angeles, and sold 420,000 units during its first week, becoming yet another massive success. The album's second track, Guerrilla Radio, won the band a Grammy for the best hard rock performance, and it's probably ingrained in many 80s and 90s kids' brains since it was featured in the video games Madden NFL 10 and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. After releasing 3 albums with Rage, both Zack and Tom solidified their reputation as outstanding frontmen. They both offered something very different as band members of the band though. Zack was obviously a very important lyricist and a powerful rapper, while Tom had developed his signature guitar sound.
And it goes like that.
His solos and riffs involve disc jockey-like scratching, volume manipulation, distinct guitar effects, and feedback that made the sound come off as robotic, rhythm-based, and very in-your-face. Now, many people believe that it's not just their music and their political message that has given Rage so much attention. It was also the fact that they themselves took action on what they believed in, no matter what other people thought. While performing Bulls on Parade on Saturday Night Live in '96, for example, their 2-song setlist was cut to 1 song after the band attempted to hang inverted American flags from their amplifiers. The inverted flag is a sign of distress and dissatisfaction, and this was aimed at the guest host of that night, the Republican presidential candidate Steve Forbes. Another example of their uproar against society was when they recorded a music video for Sleep Now in the Fire on the 26th of January of 2000. The director of the video, Michael Moore, had gotten the permission from the New York City Film Office to film the steps of Federal Hall National Memorial, but went on to shoot on several other restricted locations. The film set had attracted several hundred people, including city authorities. When the shooting was done and the band was about to leave the steps, police officers apprehended Moore and led him away. Moore yelled to the band, "Take the New York Stock Exchange." And so they did. Morello and a couple of hundred people ran in through the first few doors and caused enough chaos to make the stock exchange close down for the rest of the day. For a few minutes, Rage Against the Machine was able to shut down American capitalism, Moore commented. Now, on October 18th, 2000, Zack sent out a message to his fans saying that, "I feel that it is now necessary to leave Rage because our decision-making process has completely failed. It is no longer meeting the aspirations of all 4 of us collectively as a band, and from my perspective, has undermined our artistic and political ideal." According to Morello, the band had arguments about everything during this time. The band dynamics started cracking up, and they quickly decided to disband. But they did release some material after they broke up as well. For example, the cover compilation CD, Renegades, along with the live album and DVD, Live at the Grand Olympic Auditorium. But no matter how much their fans hoped to get a new album, it never saw the light of day. Morello, Wilk, and Comerford, on the other hand, decided to stay together and saw the breakup as an opportunity to create something new. In 2001, they teamed up with then former Soundgarden singer Chris Cornell and formed Audioslave. Despite it being a non-political band, in contrast to Rage, the band gained massive influence. And in its 6 years of existence, Audioslave released 3 albums and sold more than 8 million records worldwide. But like Rage, Audioslave sadly also broke apart because of personality conflicts. From there on, the band members went on to do their own musical projects. Tom Morello did a solo project called Night Watchman and formed Street Sweeper Social Club with Boots Riley. Zack de la Rocha collaborated with the likes of DJ Shadow, Company Flow, Ronnie Size, Questlove, and Trent Reznor, But much of the music that he created never saw the light of day. Tim Comerford started a few bands called Future User and Walkrat, and Brad Wilk did collaborations with tons of different bands like Pucifer, Cypress Hill, Snoop Dogg, Josh Homme, Foo Fighters, Smashing Pumpkins, and probably a bunch of other artists too. Now, all of these side projects were interesting and all, but fans had a much bigger surprise coming their way. Rage reunited at Coachella in 2007 to stand up against what Morello called the right-wing purgatory, a reference to the actions of the Bush administration in the US. People believed that this would be a one-off show, but that was not the case. They actually started a tour traveling all around the world in 2007 and 8. Although the touring obviously got fans excited for the possibility of a new album, the band was quick to deny it. And then they confirmed a new album. And then they said no. And then yes. The band seemed to go through a process in this moment where they weren't exactly sure of what the future would look like. A few years without a new album turned into 19 years, to many fans' dismay. But maybe it was for the better. But yet another formation of the band was yet to see the light of day. In May 2016, the members of the band did regroup as a supergroup called Prophets of Rage. The band consisted of Rage's original members, Morello, Wilk, and Comerford, but they were also joined by Chuck D of Public Enemy and Be Real of Cypress Hill. About the group and its relationship to Rage Against the Machine, Morello said, "Right now, the cold embers of Rage Against the Machine are now the burning fire of Prophets of Rage. Where Rage Against the Machine lives is this summer in these songs that we're playing. And we have nothing but the greatest love and honor and respect for Zack de la Rocha, the brilliant lyricist of Rage Against the Machine, who is working on his own music, which I'm sure will be fantastic. He's a great artist in his own right. But where you're going to hear Rage Against the Machine is in Prophets of Rage."
Thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and also a huge shout out again to my patrons. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to run this YouTube channel. Now, if you want to become a patron as well, make sure you click this button right here. By becoming a patron, you actually gain access to so many awesome perks. You get to request future videos, you gain early access to my videos way before they're uploaded on this channel, and so much more. So make sure you check it out, and I'll talk to you soon, all right? Take care, bye.